We have 10,000 CVs applying. This is hard competition. So you have to stand out from the crowd, put time and effort into what you're writing in the cover letter and the CV. You'll be surprised what we pick up on. The amount of time we read it is not large, but if there's mistakes or errors, and I've read ones that said, I'd like to apply to Red Bull, applied here.
Yeah, it's a bit awkward, isn't it? Hello and welcome to The Fast and the Curious. We take you behind the scenes of the wonderful world of Formula One with race debriefs and interviews with some of the biggest names in the sport. My name is Christian Hugill. I'm the podcast's resident Formula One expert in a sort of sad turn of events for this podcast. But, you know, here we are. We make the best of what we have, don't we? Team Principal Greg James is also here. Hello, Greg.
Hello there, Christian. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll realise that we don't have a Betty Glover this week. She's on holiday, but we have two fantastic guests for a very special episode as we take you into the sport even further than we usually do. And we're joined by our good pals at Williams today. This is really, really fun.
Williams.
On the sofa is Christina. Welcome to The Fast and the Curious, Christina. Can you tell everyone your job? It's one of the best job titles on the planet, please.
I love this.
Yeah, I'm a wind tunnel systems engineer at Williams, yeah.
A wind tunnel systems engineer.
It's the coolest job title in the world.
Yeah, really good.
So cool. We talk a lot about the wonderful world of Formula One on this podcast, but we don't, frankly, devote enough time to how to get a job in Formula One. And that's what we're focusing on this week. Not only have we got Christina here, but we've also got quite a cool guest, if I do say so myself. Hello, Williams team principal James Vowles. Welcome back to The Fast and the Curious.
Thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure to be back with you.
James, the last time you were on the podcast, we were on the stage in front of thousands and thousands of people. It was cold. It was windy. You made Greg James wear a cap. Now we get you in some comfort. Are you in your office at the Williams base by any chance?
I am indeed, yeah. I'm here up in Grove in Oxfordshire, and it's still a pretty horrible day if I'm completely honest outside. That day in Silverstone, I wore every layer of clothing I had and I was still cold. It was pretty miserable.
And after that podcast show, I was so wet, I had to do a complete clothes change at about 9 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, I'm completely with you there, James, completely with you. You're in the dry. We're very glad to hear that. And we talk so much about F1, but it can be a daunting thing to think, actually, I want to go and work in it. Christina, we'll dig into how you got into your role in F1 in just a minute. James, can you remember those first steps and thinking, actually, I'd quite like to do this as a career?
Yeah, I did. And I'm really pleased to say we've moved on a lot in nearly 30 years. But 30 years ago, you didn't really bring graduates into the business. I don't know how you got into Formula One, but pretty much everyone I met was sort of mid-30s and there wasn't graduate programs. It wasn't really a common thing. And teams were different back then. We were sort of 200, 250 people, not into the 1,000, 1,200 you are today. So it wasn't a structured process that was in place to get us in. But I do remember really the experience of certainly getting invited for an interview and then getting accepted into the team. And it stays with you. That's how potent and powerful it is. It really stays with you as a memory.
Incredible that there's such a difference in the number of people involved in a Formula One team now. I mean, that's to do with what, James? The fact that the sport is much bigger, the fact that it's more technical. What is it? A combination of things, I guess.
I mean, first of all, it's a competition. So as competition heats up, you'll find ways of getting an advantage relative to your competitor. And obviously, workforce size is one of those. But we went from, I mean, the complexity of the cars is completely different. Cars back then, if you just go and look really at the cars back in the late 90s, early 2000s, you'll see it's mostly straight lines. Whereas now, God forbid, we ever have one of those on the car. And the complexity in how we're doing carbon, the systems we're using, the amount of downforce that we're generating, all of it has just stepped up a level. But you can also see that in how reliable the cars are, how well they're built, how now pieces just come from the factory and fit together, how many updates we're doing in a year, and even just how much performance we're adding race on race. That's just where your workforce goes. It's a more complex problem, which requires a bigger workforce.
And I guess also opening up the sport needs people to help it reach others. So marketing and socials and, you know, all of that, communications and all of that stuff. Christina, how'd you get into wind?
How did I get into wind? That is a great question.
As a line
on the sail,
as a job.
just keep going. I was actually quite different story than to James. James, he was on a different podcast a few weeks ago talking about your journey and how...
There aren't any other podcasts.
Right, sorry. Just only this one.
I
He
know
was
what
here,
you're talking
really.
about.
She went on a different podcast.
What an odd thing to say.
This level of
My bad, sorry,
betrayal.
Taylor. I'm talking about how he's been in it for like quite a while, and you changed, you know, your career path and your degree to try to get into it. I sort of fell into it, honestly. So
Falling into a wind tunnel is very dangerous.
yeah, I don't recommend it
Yeah.
unless you have a harness on, which sometimes you do need to wear them.
Yeah.
So during pandemic times, everyone was doing pretty crazy things, I think. So I went to the University of Waterloo, which is in Canada.
Oh.
And it's quite a, maybe not over here, but North America, it's quite a big reputation because of its co-op program, which is essentially the internship program, placement program over here, but in North America. And so what we do is that we do 6 4-month internships in a 5-year degree. So we swap between a 4-month school term and a 4-month work term, swapping back.
Oh, fantastic. What a
for
great
5
idea.
years. Yeah, it's really quite cool. So it's quite fast-paced and competitive, but it teaches you so much so early on. So I was on my co-op term and when COVID happened, and I unfortunately lost my job. And instead of working there, I did some research for a professor at the University of Waterloo, but I still needed to do a dissertation for my work term. And during this time, my sister was quarantining with us, and she actually really got into Drive to Survive.
Right, okay.
Yeah, like, so she was like, Christina, we gotta watch this. We're at home, you're gonna watch the whole show with me. And I was like, okay, Veronica. And I just fell in love with it.
Wow.
And, yeah, so Drive to Survive, it shows like that, like the exposure that show has gotten into is quite incredible. So I did my dissertation on Formula One, actually, that term. And what happened was because I was doing so much research on Formula One and aerodynamics, and I got an ad from LinkedIn about Williams placements. So I applied and I got the job. So that's when I did a placement, and I was there in Williams from 2021 August to the year after 2022. And then I got back hired full time, and I've been here since October.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
It is extraordinary.
Extraordinary story, but that's what you're talking about, James. The sport has completely changed, and it's opened up different pathways of people getting in, and that's, I don't know how common that is, that people watched. I guess it's the first generations of people who've watched Drive to Survive and are now working in the sport.
I don't think you realize, like in North America, Drive to Survive, like everyone is into it now.
Yeah.
I think motorsport is like quite popular, and it's so much history here in the UK and in Europe. And North America hasn't been, especially Formula One, hasn't been very popular.
Yeah.
But Drive to Survive has truly expanded it.
What
so
a wonderful change from just like sort of watching a driver and going, I'd like to be a driver, and then do anything now.
I can relate to what Christina's saying a little bit, because I watched it on the TV growing up in the 90s and 2000s and thought, it's impossible to work in that sport. That's a million miles away from me. And I, pinch myself every time I walk in the paddock still, because it still feels amazing that I get there. James, we've seen examples with Christina that it is possible, right? And it's important to remember when people who might be listening to this or might be watching this and thinking, actually, it's something I'd like to do. Christina's journey shows that it's possible, doesn't it?
Funnily enough, one of the more commonly asked questions I have, especially actually within America and Canada, with Montreal and Austin, when I've gone there, is how do I, here's where I am, here's what I've done, how do I get involved? And it's all walks of life. It's people who've already graduated, they're working in a different environment, but they're just fascinated and interested. So I think the story is probably more common than you may think. And the answer to it is quite simple. I mean, if you go on our website, there's a career section, and there's an early careers bit of it, which includes graduates and otherwise. Simple as that. It is about applying. And if you don't apply, there's zero chance of getting in. But we have, and we are still growing day by day. And the point to that is simply that the world is, I guess, where we want to be picking our brightest and best from. It's not about being closed in the environment. It's about actually going out and reaching out and finding the absolute best that exists worldwide. And that's the new state of things. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely perfect. So asking the question, go on the website and apply.
williamsf1.com/careers is...
You could do it. What would you go for? If I was sort of 16, 17, 18 now, I'd apply for that.
Yeah, and I think
it'd be great fun.
To answer your question,
it's not too late, Craig, I don't think.
What can I do? What would I do?
Well, that's a different problem. But
Wow, that was a real kiss and diss right there. I don't know. I mean, I could. What could I do? I'd be a good. I'd be a good. Well, team
Marketing
principal
role,
eventually.
and
How would
communications role,
comms?
business,
Comms.
That's what I was
for
going to
sure.
say. When you asked me what I'd do, I'd shaping how a Formula One team communicates is something that would interest me. You'd be good at that.
Yeah, it'd be good.
James, that's an important job, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, here's the other bit that people, I guess, it's not really commonly understood. Every single person within the organization contributes towards the success of it. Every single one within a Formula One team, and irrespective of where you are. And it simply doesn't work unless everyone is pointing in the right direction and working together. So, yeah, definitely to that. And yeah, I can see Greg in a comms role.
Okay, comms role, great.
If that radio stuff didn't work out, there you go. You got a plan B.
Yeah.
And James, a part of motorsport away from this podcast I'm involved in is working with Racing Pride, the industry's LGBT motorsports group, and we go into F1 teams and talk to them about, you know, the importance of bringing LGBT people in. We've seen the sport rise in popularity amongst women hugely in the last decade. And I don't think I'm saying anything massively controversial when I'm saying that when I watched it on the TV as a kid, you saw the presenters stood in the paddock, and in the background, you only saw typically white middle-aged men. How important has it been for Formula One to change that? Because that has been a big journey for the sport in the last 10, 15 years or so.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think you're saying anything controversial. It's just as it was. It's fact. It doesn't mean it was correct. It's just fact of the situation. Yeah. When I joined the first Formula One team, it was, and by the way, I'm saying this as a white middle-aged male, I kind of get that irony, but it was, you weren't attracting, I don't think, anything more than a certain population of individuals into Formula One. So it is changing, and it's changing for the better. And there's good reason behind that as well, which is that the cleverest people in the world aren't necessarily from a small subset of it. They're from all over the world, and we need to make sure that it's brightest and best. One of the things I'm really proud that we're doing here, really proud, which we don't shout out enough about, so I'm going to do it now, since this seems like a perfect forum. What we're doing within Williams is this. Every year we've got circa 5,000 students coming through our grounds. So obviously schools are back again, and actually it's just kicked back off again. And the reason why we're doing it, it's aged, by the way, 8 to around about 16 or 17. The reason why we're doing this is originally I thought it's not a problem, we'll go to university and make sure that when individuals at university, welcome to Williams, this is a great place for you to be. That doesn't work. Actually, what you have to do is go right down to the age group of 8, 9, 10 when you're forming your ideas and say, it doesn't matter where you're from, what your background, man or woman, it really doesn't matter. Here's Williams, here's Formula One, here's step subjects. If you want to do these, great. And at least you now have awareness that they're available to you. And if you don't, really great as well. If you want to be Greg James, we need a few of those in the world. And that's not a problem.
Not that many, trust me.
You need one. One good one.
Probably one. But my point to that is only that's how you really get on top of all of this. It's not like fine-tuning at university.
I love that. I really love that. There isn't enough of that foresight, because you're absolutely right, James. You can, well, a lot of kids develop their passions very early on. And often it's racing driver.
But that was me.
Yeah.
But that was I was born in 1991, and my earliest F1 memory is being sparked by Damon Hill winning the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix, because I remember the chaos of the race, and Damon was in a bright yellow car. That is a way of getting kids interested.
Yeah, of course.
A bright yellow car.
But imagine going round Williams at age 8.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
That is when your journey starts.
My God.
And Christina, for you, you've obviously fallen in love with this sport slightly later when you saw Drive to Survive and that sort of thing. But based on what we were talking about there with James, were you ever intimidated by it, by the sport's sheer size, by the fact that historically it's been seen as male dominated?
Yeah.
Were you ever intimidated by the sport before you thought, actually, I can do this?
I think I'm actually quite lucky. I'm quite fortunate. So my older sister and my mom are both engineers. So is my dad and my brother. And I've always been in the world of engineering from a very young age, and coming from my sister's experience, my mom's experience, it's not any different, and it hasn't been that way at Williams. Like, it's not a subject of a topic of subject that you talk about. That yes, I am often sometimes the only woman sitting in a meeting room, or I'm me and one other woman are in the wind tunnel at any time, and it's just surrounded by men. But you don't notice it really. And I think that what makes Williams really, really fantastic is that, you know, it doesn't matter. We're here to hire and cultivate the best engineers, the best thinkers, the best problem solvers. And if you can do that and you put your mind to it, you can work anywhere, really. I think that what James was really highlighting is that what's important is the exposure at a young age. And I think that's one of the reasons that it has been very male dominated in the past couple of decades, is because the exposure to young minds, to women, hasn't been there. And I think all the programs that not only Williams, but a lot of companies are doing are trying to show that this is something that you can be interested in and you can be successful in.
Let's dig into your early years then a little bit, because obviously you said your family were engineers.
Yeah.
But what was the first bit that you were exposed to and you went, oh my God, I'd love to do a bit of that. I'd love to make that, or make that thing work. Or how does that thing work? Was that what it was?
So I hate to say that I was groomed is not like a lie to say that my mom put me in like all the nerdy science camps and all the nerdy engineering camps, and they're like, okay, go build this robot. And I'm like, okay. So I just really enjoyed it. And my mom saw me when I was a kid. My favorite show was How It's Made.
Okay.
Absolutely loved it. We'll watch it for hours and hours. And she's like, okay, you like this? Let's go into it. And being both my parents are engineers, you know, they had a bias towards it. So when I remember I was doing a robotics camp at the University of Waterloo when I was 11 years old. And one of the teachers, they actually asked me, can you come next week? We're doing 8 and 9-year-olds. Can you come help us teach them?
Right.
And I was like, yeah, sure. And they thought that was such a natural fit, and I just enjoyed it so much. So,
So was there a dream job when you were studying? Were there things that you were, or were you just looking for an adventure?
So
because wind tunnels, a Formula One team, is
absolutely.
an adventure, surely, isn't it? But it's not.
A dream job. I mean, one of the reasons I studied mechatronics engineering, and one of the things about it is that you can really do anything. It's very applicable. The breadth of knowledge that you learn is.
So what sort of things would that be? What jobs classically
robotics, mech design, software design, is, since it's integration of all the different types of engineering, you get into it. My dream job, actually, when I was a kid, I wanted to do special effects in film. That was actually my big thing.
Cool.
And then Formula One came, and I was like, I had this opportunity to work at Williams. So I was like, I got to go for it. So, yeah.
I mean, the whole sport is like a mad movie.
There was
really
two things I was obsessed with as a kid when I was growing up. One was Formula One. The other was Robot Wars, or Battle Bots, as it is over in America. I tell you what, if I could bring back Robot Wars, if there's any TV execs watching, that's a dream gig. We should say as well, we've been talking about the Williams website. Applications are open.
Yeah.
If you want to get involved, like we've been talking about, go to williamsf1.com/careers. The link is in the description of this episode as well. Once you've gone to that website, Christina, how does it work? How do you go from there and thinking, okay, this is what I want to be involved with?
It's really easy. So there's a lot of different types of roles that they have. They have apprenticeship roles, which are sort of multi-year programs. You have industrial placements, which is what I did. And they have that on different teams. You don't have to be just an engineer. There's some in HR, there's some in business, everywhere across the company. There's summer placements. So there's you look at whatever one you find the most interested in or works with your schedule and such, and apply with your resume. Maybe write a really good cover letter.
Yeah.
I know those dreaded things that no one likes to write, but maybe write one for Williams. Yeah, for sure.
Maybe send a little robot in to deliver it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Just to prove that you can do that sort of thing.
Yeah, but no, it's really easy.
James, a quick question from one of our listeners, Bethan, and this is it's quite an interesting one about working in motorsport before you get into motorsport. Is it beneficial to work in non-motorsport engineering and then move up the motorsport ladder, or try and get into motorsport as soon as possible?
So this has changed probably across the 20 years, but I would say you need to get into motorsport as soon as possible. It's a very specialist expertise area. It's not that engineering differs dramatically depending on where you're going. It's more that we're becoming more and more specialist. And as a result of that, you need to get in as soon as possible to understand where you can apply your strength to that. So definitely don't delay. the reason why I'm hesitant on that is I've had some brilliant individuals. We have one here who's our COO, who was in actually airplane engine manufacturer business for a long, long time. And he brings with him lots of different ideas and concepts that he learned there. But I'd say that's more the exception rather than the rule.
And James, this one follows on directly, actually. It's from Joanna. Joanna asks, what's the best pathway into an engineering role? My friend has a maths degree and wants to get into F1 level engineering and mechanics, but has no idea where to start. So I'm literally asking for a friend.
So the good thing with maths is it's a fantastic grounding, especially when you're looking at elements such as structures, which is a vital part of what we do here, or FEA, finite element analysis. Answering the question anyway, first and foremost, is it depends from that. I can't really tell whether graduate level or more experience, but at a graduate level, that's a perfectly sensible foundation to work from. And what I would do is if they're not at university anymore and a graduate, apply to the graduate program. If they're all still at university and going through their maths degree, then apply to our industrial placement program, which takes you out for 12 months. And with that sort of background, I'd apply to aerodynamics, I'd apply to vehicle dynamics, and I'd apply to effectively the design office, because we bring in about 30 to 40 individuals. There's opportunity in a number of areas. Even if they are not successful, what I would then go on to look at doing is a master's, potentially in an engineering discipline. That's pretty much what I did. I did sort of a computer science mathematics and then did an engineering master's on top of that. And that, again, gives you two strings to your bow that many others wouldn't have. So that there's a number of different ways. What I'm really trying to intonate is don't give up at the first hurdle. It's just keep growing your knowledge base and you'll be successful, I hope.
Does that resonate with you, Christina, that you have to keep learning and you keep finding out and keep refining those skills? I
think, just to add to what James said, I think just applying and then trying different aspects. Like I know Formula student teams are really popular. So if you're in a university, definitely see if your university has a Formula student team to join and to try to get exposed to that atmosphere and seeing what you can learn. I got into cars because of my co-op placements back in North America. I started randomly into like camera sensors, and then I went onto trains, right. And then I went to electric vehicles, and now I'm in Formula One. So it's sort of just, weaving your way through what you can take from different experiences, and then using that to hone your next experience.
This all feels like a very exciting, welcoming place to work, and that only really works, James, when you've got something very clear to work towards. And it feels like with your driver lineup that there's something to inspire all the people that are working on those cars. To have Alex, who's such a stalwart now of Williams, and now to bring in Carlos, that feels like a very exciting prospect for everybody working together on.
Yeah, it shows the intent of what we're looking to achieve. It's not about doing things by halves. It's proper investment, and I believe the best driver lineup on the grid working alongside us. So both of which know what we've got coming in the future, and it's why they're excited by this prospect. And I think that's the real key point to it. In the case of Alex and Carlos, they had really half the grid chasing after them, and this is where they've committed to. And that will be a warning sign, but also a clear indication of why it's an exciting time to be at Williams, because there's a lot of good things coming in the future, a lot.
What did you see in Carlos that you like so much, apart from being a very talented driver?
And having great hair.
And amazing hair.
He's got annoyingly good hair as well.
Really good hair.
Yeah.
James was just thinking about it.
It's a reflection from all of us. Yeah,
that was a dream boat.
Good hair. Sorry, you were saying, James, Carlos.
What I was looking for is this. This Williams clearly isn't where we want to be at the moment, and we're still restructuring ourselves and building ourselves. And what I therefore need within Alex and whoever was driving alongside him is a leader. It's an individual that wants to come in and fundamentally help me, stand by my side as we find all the areas where we've got to improve, and we've got to improve quickly and define the new standard within Formula One. So Carlos drives quickly. Everyone knows that about him. But probably the bit that isn't as apparent is how hard he works underneath in order to make the team structured correctly, how to deliver every millisecond of performance. And that's what he is. His own words, not mine. He's a performance machine. He just wants everything to be performing at the highest level and moving it on day by day. And that continuous change, that continuous improvement is in my culture as well. And we connected a lot on that. with him, if you look at every team he's been in, not just has he beaten some of the best drivers on the grid, Lando, Charles, he's there fighting them at all times. But he's also, that team that he's been with has moved forward on the grid. And it's not a coincidence. It's because of his hard work and diligence that he puts in at the same time.
Christina, what was the mood in the wind tunnel when they shouted down it? Call of Science has been signed.
Sign. I'm guessing it echoes.
So
I don't know if it does.
Say again.
Yeah, James was in the wind tunnel.
Wind off.
Yeah, he was in the tunnel. He was echoing everywhere.
Oh my God, his hair in that wind tunnel looked like bloody Beyonce.
That would be a cool music video, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were the ripples that went through the...
Actually, James announced it in the raceway, and we're all on the team, and James was talking about it. It was like such an electrifying mood when Carlos showed up on one of the TV screens saying like, yeah, I decided to join the team, and the entire raceway just shouted in excitement like this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And like just James said, I think it's the best driver lineup for next season for sure, and we're like, it's definitely energized the entire team. Yeah.
James, we've mentioned a few times that, you know, there's different people in different areas, and your job, of course, as a team principal is to be across all those people. What sort of person do you look for? I'm appreciating that is a very broad question considering there's so many different roles, but what sort of person are you looking for when you're looking for someone who can work in Formula One? What are the good character traits?
So the main thing is this. Universities are all pretty good at teaching you to a level. You get a degree, which is brilliant, but what it shows me is you're able to learn to that level. But that's really where my interest sort of stops to a certain extent. I'm more interested in how you perform in a pressure environment, and you can create that within an interview. I'm interested in how you reason yourself basically with a fairly complex problem, and it's not the answer I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is how do you approach it, how do you talk it through, how do you work it through, when do you ask for help? That's what I'm looking for, because those are the individuals that under pressure know how to communicate, know how to say, this is the bit I don't know, but this is what I do know, and this is how we can work together. Because really good ideas don't come from one individual working with a technical degree. They work by groups of individuals really coming together and having forming an idea that creates an innovation. So looking for those characteristics early on, and by the way, that's irrespective of what area you're in. I've generally found that clever individuals that can think on their toes, that understand where their limitations are and understand how to perform under pressure are the ones that really excel.
James, you mentioned there creating a pressurized environment in an interview. Does that mean you're very much bad cop? Do you turn up the pressure in one of these interviews? Are you going to grill them?
No, you don't need to. No, I don't play that. It's an interesting one. Lovely imagery. But no, it's the pressure's created by...
Thank you.
You can be surprised what you do to a human just by asking questions that challenge them. And you just keep challenging them. All you do is you up the difficulty level depending on how they respond to it. Simple as that. And this is tried and tested. I mean, there are sort of airplanes that pilots, etc., go through something very rigorous that's very similar to that. I've just adapted it to an interview technique. It's fun. It's not bad. It's just actually this brings me on to a second bit you're looking for. You're looking for someone that's reasonably competitive as well. That this sport is so rewarding. I've had some of the highest highs I've felt in my life and some of the lowest lows, but you have to be driven by passion and you have to be driven by a competitive edge, and you're looking for that as well in the interview stage.
You need resilience to survive in motorsport, don't you? And it must be fair to say that motorsport is a world that comes with ups and downs. Someone we've had on this podcast is Williams Academy driver Zach O'Sullivan, who last week it was announced won't be on the F2 grid, certainly for the foreseeable. Some are saying that's partly down to a funding issue. How does that sort of thing work? It must also be part of the journey in motorsport to have to be able to bounce back. And do you have to work with your people like Zach, who've gone through a hard time, to be able to sort of rally around them in these tough times?
I mean, it's obviously that's really the limelight version of it. But in the case of Zach, we supported him as much as we could do, certainly for Formula 3. And again, this year in Formula 2, there was commitments that unfortunately he just couldn't maintain from his side. And it's not something I ever want to see. It's heartbreaking, actually, because you want something to end because there's been a natural end to it, either performance or otherwise. In this particular circumstance, it's not that whatsoever at all. What you do, though, is the same skill that got him to where he is today is the same skill that he has today. And this applies whether I'm talking about Zach or anyone else within the business. And what you do is you support them in that process, because there's still plenty of opportunity to be a professional racing driver elsewhere. And remember I spoke about the highest highs and the lowest lows. Some of the highest highs I've had are, for example, when I called Franco into the office on Tuesday to speak to him, and it's the emotion that he felt in that period of time. I wish again I could bottle it, the same as Christina was talking about when we announced Carlos.
I'm guessing to say that he's got a drive that he was going to be getting a Formula One chance.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's when I told him on the Tuesday. And you've suddenly taken someone that's from the age of about 6, been working just towards this, that has given everything into it and changed their life in one word. And it's quite impressive what it does. And there's very few things I can think of where you're given that amount of responsibility and control to do that. You've changed someone's life quite literally in the space of 10 seconds. That's some of the highest highs. The lowest lows go with it, that obviously in order to do that, there was space that's been created. And that meant having very difficult talks with Logan it wasn't just one talk. It's obviously, I've tried my best. I've said this very openly, honestly. I'm always brutally honest, and the brutal honesty will come with it some harshness. But I want everyone to be aware that you have an opportunity. This is your opportunity. This is what we need to see. And in the case of Logan, he did everything in his power. It's not from any lack of diligence on his side and working every minute of the day. He did. But it gets to a point where we've reached the end of that road, and that's where we are. And that's what I meant by the highest highs and lowest low. In the space of about 24 hours, I had both of those again. But our team is more than 2 drivers, and that's what Drive to Survive shows, I think, really well. It's 1,000 people that give up every minute of their day to do this. And I really do mean that. It's not a job in the way that you traditionally think about a job. This becomes how you receive income, but it's your hobby, your passion, your life. And we need to make sure that we're respecting that for the 1,000 people working away as well.
And you talked about the natural conclusions. You wanted natural conclusions, and Zach maybe didn't get one, but you feel like with Logan, that was the conclusion to that particular bit of his career, because everyone had tried and done their absolute best. But we loved chatting to Logan, and we loved following that story, actually. And we do wish him well, because he's a lovely bloke and clearly a very, very talented driver.
And there was clearly no lack of want from Williams. James, the opportunity was given there, and it was obvious looking from the outside how much you wanted Logan to succeed. That must be tricky, I'm guessing, as a team principal, to have to deal with those highs and lows. That must be tricky for you to deal with. That's not easy.
It comes with a job, but not tricky. It really is part of the job. It's just what I was more describing there is how in a moment with a few words you can take away a dream from an individual and provide a dream to an individual. But that's our business. It's no different to most companies. The difference is it's on a world stage with
very
70 million people watching it.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Have you had many chats with Logan since, or do you have to just leave him to...
Yeah, I spoke to him Friday. So he's out in the US. I mean, hopefully that also shows what he means to the team. And otherwise, I've said it pretty openly, but he remains a part of our academy, and I want him to be successful as a professional racing driver. So in that is, where is he, what are the teams we're talking to, what's going on here? He was on his way to IndyCar that weekend. And definitely, I mean, it's the point at which you have to pull these people like that in closer, not further away, push them away from you.
Nicely said. Very nicely said.
So anyone watching or listening to this can start working towards some of those highest highs and get involved in the world of Formula One.
And the lowest lows.
And the lowest lows. Therefore, that sometimes come with it. But that's life,
you can't have one without the other. And that's what makes the high so fantastic sometimes.
Absolutely. Let's just get a bit of a reminder where you can go to get involved in the scheme that we've been talking about. James, where would people need to go if they think, actually, I'm going to do it, I'm going to try and get on this Formula One ladder?
So there's a couple of things I was going to put in there. This is, I mean, it's the root cause of who I am, because I came into the sport 30 years ago as a graduate, and I firmly believe in it. It's also in just the core of Williams. It's very much embedded in there. It's about investing in future generations. So I spoke about the school program. The second thing we have is the Komatsu Williams. Basically, we've got together and done an engineering academy. And it's about an extension of that at the same time. And actually, there's a synergy between the two of us. And then our early careers is another bit of it. So we spoke about the website where you go to the career section. Christina spoke about, she came in very much as an IP then graduate. But to give you an idea, 10% of our workforce is early careers. So I think from my perspective, what we are doing within Williams is making sure that we're clear about this. The future leaders of our organization, I think, are sat on the sofa next to you, to be completely transparent, but are within our organization.
That way, not that way.
Yeah, that way.
You said that rather quickly there, James. I felt, but you know, that's fine.
Just a chance. Just still a chance. Don't worry.
No, we don't. We're old news. You're the new news.
Yeah, this is
exciting.
Correct. Exactly that. But it's about investing correctly into that, and it's not just about the job provision. I mean, you asked, how do you get there? This is all going to sound very cliche, but we have 10,000 CVs applying. This is hard competition, so you have to stand out from the crowd. And the way you stand out from the crowd is, first and foremost, this is the cliche bit, but you have to be top of your class in what you're doing. You have to be really right at the very best of what you're achieving. The second thing is exactly as Christina said, put time and effort into what you're writing in the cover letter and the CV. You'll be surprised what we pick up on. The amount of time we read it is not large, but if there's mistakes or errors, and I've read ones that said, I'd like to apply to Red Bull, applied here.
Yeah, it's a bit awkward, isn't it?
That's not the diligence required. You've got to want it and mean it, which means you've got to put your time and effort in. And it's not a huge amount for the reward you get, but stand out. Actually, the idea of sending in a small model that you've designed or otherwise, or an idea or concept, is not foolish, because you stand out from the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Great idea with great ideas.
Thank you.
Get name of team right.
Get the name of the team. And find the person as well. This is always a thing that I talk about with radio. Is like, find a person that can actually give you advice
and make a connection with them.
Don't go for necessarily. Don't send it necessarily to James Vowles. Maybe. But find someone who's in charge of the wind tunnel, or maybe find someone who's in charge of communications, or whatever. Christina, can we just explore your actual job a bit?
Yeah.
Because I am fascinated by a wind tunnel. I went to visit a rival wind tunnel, and I'm sorry to say that. It was a wind tunnel, and it was in Woking. I won't say exactly which team, but there's a pretty big clue there.
It was McLaren, wasn't it?
Shut up!
Right, sorry.
Don't say that filthy word in front of these two.
Traitor.
But I was struck at the enormity of it, and that might sound stupid to say that, but it's absolute. It's when you're the only thing I can liken it to is when you're about to get on a plane, and you're at the bottom of the steps, and you look up at the engine, and you go, "Oh Christ, this could engulf me." Yeah. So tell us about your job, your day to day. What's your day to day in a wind tunnel?
Yeah, I sometimes forget how unique where I work is, because I sit right next to the wind tunnel every single day. Yeah. And you know, Williams, we have 2 wind tunnels, not just one. And the facilities we have is like kind of crazy. You know, there's robots everywhere and lasers everywhere. And
sorry, what do you mean robots everywhere?
There's robots.
What, delivering you lunch? And
like
things?
Robot Wars earlier. Is Sir Killalot now working at Williams? Is that what's happened?
Yeah, sort of. They're serving you lunch and stuff. No.
We don't know about this. What do you mean robots?
So that we have robots on cameras, and they're taking pictures of the car while it's in the wind tunnel. Yeah. So my job, I actually, I'm currently designing the new wind tunnel model for 2026. Cool. And I work with a lot of other very talented engineers and other teams, and we're developing new systems to go on the wind tunnel model, and how is everything going to fit with the new regulations. And obviously maintaining the wind tunnel there's a lot of people on my team. Like, I'm definitely not the only one. And you know, the wind tunnel's it's strangely at the root of where everything else kind of leads out to. So we do so much aero dev, and it's constantly that balance between do we run or do we try to upgrade the tunnel? And it's always hectic. There's something new every single day, and there's so many different problems, and it's a really interesting place, actually.
Yeah, it must be. There was someone who was taking me around this unnamed place in Woking, and they said that when they turned it on for the first time, it caused a blackout in the Woking area because it takes so much energy. Yeah. A similar thing happened in Oxford.
It has. We have had blackouts. It's not because of the wind tunnel, but we've sometimes had the
sabotage.
Yeah, we've sometimes had the fan. It's, you know, you talk about the airplane engine. It's totally 5-6 times size of that. Yeah. And one time it was spinning the wrong way, which I didn't even think it was possible.
You put it on suck. It used to be on blow, guys.
And the entire building shook.
Wow.
It was crazy. And luckily we stopped it and it was fine. It was just a really weird mishap. But that was a really like, my manager who's been there for 20 years, he was like, I didn't even know I could do that. Yeah.
James is upstairs in his office typing away and the whole building shakes and he goes, guys, everything okay? I'm not quite sure. That was a good sound.
But that's experimenting, isn't it? That's,
yeah.
That's pushing the boundaries. Wow. What fascinating work.
What advice would you give to anyone who thinks, I might give this a go?
Put it on blow.
Other than that.
Top tip. Put it on
remember
blow.
which button to press.
Yeah.
I think that young people, especially now, especially in university and reaching that time when you're entering university, it's such a high pressurized, pivotal, like, decision you can make. And I think taking time to really decide and not rushing is important. I think something that I struggled with in university was, unfortunately, comparison. And coming from my university, it was a very competitive environment. You know, you're interviewing with your classmates, you're applying for the same jobs, you're applying for these big tech companies. And not comparing yourself is so natural that you forget that, like, you know, as long as I'm doing the best I can today and I'm doing better than I was yesterday, that's what you should focus on. And I think that learning to understand that, you know, life isn't a race and you shouldn't always try to be better than everyone else. Just try to find something you enjoy and hopefully you're good at and just really, really engage in that. And I think what James was saying earlier, like, if there's one skill I'd say it really helps is learning how to problem solve. Like, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it doesn't matter what team you're on. If you know how to communicate yourself, learning how to problem solve, what steps to take, it'll help you regardless of where you're going to go.
Yeah.
So.
It's great advice, and I'm sure James would agree that that's great advice. James, I do think it might be an idea to wrap this up, though, before Christina gives away too many secrets about the 2026 plans. Do you agree?
I've learned something new. I didn't realise our fan went the wrong way either, particularly.
You will be investigating that later.
Yeah. No, I think hopefully you've heard it here really as live as can be from real experience of someone that's come into our environment. I mean, our arms are wide open. That's sort of the point behind it. It's a growing organisation. Everyone has an opportunity. So take it. Don't sit on your hands and take the opportunity to join.
James, we know how busy the job of a team principal is. You've described it to us before. So we're really grateful for you taking the time to not only come on the podcast, but also take some time to discuss how to get people into Formula One. I think it's a really, really great thing. So thank you to you, James, for coming on, and to Team Williams, and you, Christina, for coming in to see us. I've learned an awful lot by this, and you never know. Hopefully, maybe, just maybe, one day there'll be someone wearing a Williams top who said, yeah, I heard about it on a podcast a few years ago, and you never know.
The other one that James did.
Yeah, it will be that one. Yeah, correct.
And just to add to Christina's thing, you said life isn't a race, but for Alex and Carlos, it actually is.
Unfortunately, that is.
You can't give that advice to those two.
Yeah, for those two, it sort of is.
Yeah.
If you're listening, life is literally a race for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's why there's only 20 of them, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, 20 mad people.
James, take care. Go well for the next race, and we really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate it. Thanks very much, everyone.
Before we let you leave, I hope you're having a nice time, by the way.
I'm having a wonderful time.
And now James is gone.
Uh-oh.
Well, in your head now, what could the trajectory be within Williams, but also without? Well, I mean, where would you? What else is in your head in terms of ambition?
Well, I'll say that the reason that I came back to full time is because I actually had such an enjoyable time during my placement. Like, I loved my team, I loved what I was working on, and just being in an environment where you're having so many people, 1,000 people plus, working on 2 cars. As for the future, I didn't even know it was going to be here 2 years ago.
Well,
So,
that's what I mean. There's sort of the sky's the limit, really, isn't it?
I really don't know. Actually, I'm hoping to really really learn and spend time at Williams and grow my skills as an engineer as much as possible, which luckily there it's a perfect place to do that. And then we'll see, I think. Yes, I'm not sure yet, actually.
That's fine. That's fine. Just wondered if you wanted to be a team principal.
I don't know, man. James' job looks really hard.
But it's one of those things, isn't it? That James is clearly an absolute brain box,
Yeah.
but doesn't get to probably do as much hands-on maths, design, engineering as he used to. Or it's funny when you go up the ranks like that, you tend to stop doing the job you came in for.
Yeah, exactly. But I think his ability to be so hyper-focused and compartmentalize different areas of the car. He's dealing with marketing, he's dealing with design, he's dealing with drivers, is an amazing skill. And it's truly a testament to like his career, for sure.
And now James isn't here.
Yeah.
We've mentioned that you've come from a different country. You were at university, remind me where?
Waterloo.
And therefore, you might sometimes, despite being in an unfamiliar territory like the UK, want to, catch up with TV programs or that sort of thing that you watched at home, right? So have you heard of NordVPN?
I can't believe you've just done that.
Wow, that was a fantastic segue. Well done.
No,
Thank you.
I think he deserves a raise.
I agree.
That segue was incredible.
I agree.
Actually,
But there's a cost cap.
I don't know.
We've got a cost cap in this
Well,
podcast.
we all used it to change our virtual locations to keep up to date with all our TV and radio while we were away from home.
Let's go for it.
And, covering races or big sporting events. You could maybe do it too, to keep up
I
to date.
actually have NordVPN.
Yay!
It's because it's fantastic.
I need to watch my Canadian shows, man.
There you go.
Thank you so much. There you go. So, even when away from Waterloo, you couldn't escape if you want to. So you can also use it to help save
Sorry,
you money.
was that also an ABBA pun?
Yes, it was. Yes, you can also
Yikes.
use it if you want to go.
Yikes.
If you
Do you
want,
know what? Christian can do this. Christina, let's go. Come on.
are you two off? Are you?
Yeah, come on.
Okay. I'm doing this. I'm doing this on my own.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. Well, the one thing if Christina were to go home and get a flight, she could change her virtual location to get it cheaper when she's booking that flight. That might be what they've rushed off to do now, or it could just be because they're disgusted with me. And NordVPN is also super safe because it protects your data when using public Wi-Fi wherever you are in the world, whether you're in Waterloo in Canada or Waterloo in England. It's a no-brainer. So to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/TFATC, where our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. And there's no risk at all with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the description of this episode. So, I didn't expect to end the episode on my own, but we have. So, we'll be back after the next Grand Prix for a debrief. They are turning the lights off now, suggesting in this episode all about careers in Formula One. I might have lost mine. Okay, I mean this is now slightly worrying me. The lights have gone out on the podcast and on my career. Bye bye.